All right. So let's go ahead. We're going to get rolling this morning. So I wanted to do something going back to, lately we've been doing a lot of new systems rollouts, and I know everybody needs a little palate cleanser every now and then. So as opposed to doing anything with Moxie or Real Scout today, what I thought we'd do is kind of go back to basics and focus back again on normal course of business, something that would be applicable. And I've helped several people in the last week or two with the process of the amendment to address concerns. So I feel like this is one class that I teach on a rotational basis because it's important, and I look around and I go, I got several of you brand new agents on this call that are going to need some skills in this soon, if not you've needed it already. So with that, we're going to kind of roll into a class that I have titled "Strategies for the Amendment to Address Concerns." Okay, so we'll do this today. I'm not sure how far we'll get through it today. If we'll get through all of it, if we do, great. If not, we'll pick up the slack on Thursday. I want to remind everybody today on my calendar, I happen to notice that there is a Moxie session for Moxie Engage at 1 o'clock. I think that is through. Yeah, I think I booked that one through Century 21 Online. If anybody wants to get involved in that, you are welcome to do so. I can send you the link, or you can get on Century 21 on Century 21 University and sign up for it yourself this afternoon. I think it's at 1 o'clock. Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? All right. I am going to roll right in, and we're going to start talking about strategies for the amendment to address concerns. All right, y'all looking at slide deck right now? Okay. So at this stage of the game, you have acquired your client, and you are under contract. You are still in the due diligence period, and you have gotten your home inspection completed, and you have obtained your report. That's where we are in the scheme of things for brand new agents like Christy and Megan, who are just kind of figuring out how this process works. Okay, so that's where you're at in this, and now we're going to talk about the actual amendment to address concerns. So the first thing is you have gotten that inspection report back. If your client hasn't seen it yet, they should. Most inspection companies will send it to them and copy you, but once in a blue moon, they may not have somebody's email address. They'll send it to you. Make sure your client has a copy of it. Send the inspection report for them to review. Do so without any comment, without any, oh, this is ugly, here you go. Your attitude for this is you're not alarmed, you're not concerned, you're interested, but you have a slight distance to the issues that are in the report. um, your client should read from you, you know what, there's nothing that phases this person. They've seen it all before, and there is a solution to every problem that comes up, whether it's on an inspection report, whether it's on a contract negotiations. Your attitude in this should be, and if you haven't heard me say this before, you'll hear me say it a lot: confident but not arrogant. It's, hey, this is not a big deal. We can get through this. Okay, that attitude will dictate a lot of your future interactions with your client. So make sure you get that important. It's, hey, here's the inspection report, um, and without editorializing on it. Okay. Um, it's important that you are setting good expectations with your buyer client, and I think that starts long even before the inspection report is scheduled. Okay. um, and it could be a conversation that sounds a lot like this. Hey, the inspection is something that a lot of people can have problems with. And something that you should anticipate is the inspector's job is to bring everything to your attention. Their job is to call everything that is wrong with the house to your attention. That can be overwhelming. This report could be long. Sometimes there's going to be some big things in there, and there's going to be a lot of small stuff in there. It's key to not get overwhelmed by anything. And my role in this is to do two things. One, to get you the best possible deal with the least amount of risk to you, while at the same time keeping this deal alive and making sure we get to the closing table. Those two things can be in conflict with each other, and sometimes they can bump up against each other. Okay. We want to talk about the reasonableness standard. What is reasonable to ask for? It is not reasonable to ask for a seller to correct all 45 pages of the inspection report items. Okay. It is not reasonable to expect super high dollar items to be completed. It is not reasonable to expect repairs that require long lead times, like replacing the entire home worth of windows. Windows are on average taking 6 to 12 months to come in. So your deal cannot be hinged upon getting new windows that the supply chain is not able to do. Okay. When you're dealing with new construction, when you're doing a home inspection on new construction, the standard used in new construction. Let me take this off of share screen so you guys can see my face while I'm doing this. I want you guys to realize in new construction, if you do a home inspection on new construction, the standard is a little bit different. In that, when a home inspection is done on new construction, the error or the fault in the home has to be visible from the center of the room. Okay, so if you've got a client that is going to do one of these numbers, go up to the wall and look down sight on the edge of the wall with their eye and go, oh, there's a hump in this wall that's doing this like this. You're not going to get anywhere. Okay. If there is a defect in the home, it has to be visible from standing in the center of the room. If you're looking at a wall, if you're looking at the blue tape or whatever, and you're looking for flaws, that's the standard in new construction. Does that make sense to everybody?
Okay, so you're saying that at what point is that the standard? Because I know someone who walked through a house and like they didn't plug holes in the stairs correctly and things like that. And I mean, they should do that because otherwise you got to go to Home Depot and
That is incorrect. Okay, so contractually, what does the contract say about the condition of the home upon the closing date? Anybody? What
it
condition
has
is the home? Go
the
ahead.
same as before, same as when you last tour or
Right.
something like that.
So that the language in the contract is the home must be in substantially the same condition as the day you went binding on the contract. Okay. So if there were pictures hanging on that wall over there in the living room on the day of the contract, were there holes underneath of those pictures? There sure were. Okay. Does the seller have a requirement to bring the home back to perfect condition upon closing? No. They have the obligation to make sure that the home is in substantially the same condition as the day it went binding. So there is no contractual requirement for them to patch holes on the walls or paint. If they do so, it's a courtesy, but it's not a requirement by the contract.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I thought we were talking new construction.
Well, in that particular example, we were talking new construction. Tell me your example again. What was your?
So like they went through and found a lot of places where they didn't like they just the work wasn't finished. So like the steps, it had a lot of places where they didn't plug the
Yeah.
you know
And
plug it properly, and they just left off things like over the doors, and things needed sealing, and just some bad workmanship in some places.
sure, in new construction, that's a lot more a lot more prevalent. I thought you were talking about like nail pops behind walls or where pictures were hung and things like that to restore that to brand new condition. But new construction, yeah, there is a standard that is a little bit higher, and that standard is how visible are the defects? Are they readily visible, or do you have to get a microscope out or and a magnifying glass to find them? That's commonly a problem in new construction because everybody thinks new construction is going to be perfect. The reality of it is probably not in new construction. Okay. The last thing on this last slide that I had up here, let me share my screen again, um, is um, in Georgia, the seller does not have a requirement to bring the home back up to current code standards. Okay. So just because an inspection report says that the hot water heater doesn't have an expansion tank and that's a current code requirement, it doesn't mean it was a code requirement when that home was originally built. So consequently, it may not, it's not a requirement that necessarily that the seller has to bring it back up to those codes. Make sense? And if you're representing the seller and they tell you, well, this is not does not meet code requirements, it's a simple response. Well, there's no requirement to meet code. It would be nice, but just because it's code doesn't mean it's an automatic. All right. Then the next step. So the reasonable criteria. What is fair game to ask for in the amendment to address concerns? Anything that deals with the health and safety of the home is going to be paramount. Any major function or system or operational system within the home should be working properly. So the plumbing system should be working 100%. The HVAC system should be working appropriately. The roof system should be keeping all the water out. Any of those major systems involved, windows, walls, foundation, all of those things are fair game to ask for. You would want to focus on anything that has a larger cost to cure. So if the seller had 5 items on their list and they left off the roof, well, gee, that's kind of important one. That might be the biggest one to focus in on, and I might consider doing away with 3 of the other things on the buyer's list to be able to address that one large cost to cure item, the roof. Okay. And also in your inspection report and the reasonableness, the things that you want to focus in on are the items that were not visible or known or acknowledged when the offer was originally written. So, for example, if you knew that the carpet was was absolute crap, that it was horrible stains and worn and needed to be replaced, was original builder grade carpet, when you saw the home, and but you knew it when you were putting that offer in, the assumption would be, especially if the home was sold as is, well, you're buying, it's not a surprise, the carpet was in horrible condition when you saw it originally. So a listing agent could make the argument, well, that was in there and you saw, yeah, and you put the offer in forward anyway. Okay. So that might be one where might want to think about doing it in the original offer instead of in the amendment to address concerns. All right. Also, is the issue likely to be identified for repair by the appraiser as a condition of the sale? Okay, so everybody knows especially with FHA and VA is going to be more prevalent. The appraiser can make the home value subject to a certain amount of repairs. And they typically are focused on anything that has to do with the health and safety of the home. So the appraised value is, the home meets the value subject to the following repairs. Repair of exposed wiring is something that they do quite often because that's a safety issue. Um, some of these older homes that were built in the 70s that have these extra wide balusters on the stairways and these ultra contemporary 1970s homes. FHA railings have to be at least 4 inches, no more than 4 inches between the balusters. That's a real common one that the FHA appraisers will flag. Okay. And also the home has to have a functional oven and a range, or functional oven or a range so somebody can cook in it. If it doesn't have those, they will make it subject to that. Okay. That is something that we see most often on FHA and VA, but it can also happen on conventionals. I've had it happen. I didn't think it could, and then it happened to me, and I was like, "Wait, hold on." They said, "Yep, it can. It's very rare, but it happens." Any questions on that before we move on?
So the stove, I didn't realize that
Mhm.
you can't sell a property without the stove.
With an FHA backed loan, it must have a functional stove or cooking appliance. Yes.
That's only FHA, so not VA and not anybody else.
I know for sure it's FHA. It might be VA. I don't know for sure.
Thing.
Okay. All right. So the inspection report is the source for all of the items that you put into your amendment to address concerns. I don't suggest that you go off script and do something that isn't contained on the inspection report. Um, if it isn't contained on the inspection report, first off, I got to question who your inspector was, because it's their job to catch everything. But generally speaking, it's harder to go to the well without a good well report, if you will. Does that make sense? All right. When you send a copy of your amendment to address concerns over, it is typical that you're going to send the listing agent the inspection report along with that. It is always a good idea to have that discussion with them first and say, I'm going to send over the inspection report with the amendment to address concerns. I assume you want to see that. Sometimes they do not. Why is that? Everybody,
They don't want to have to disclose it later because they have the
that,
information.
that is right. So what happens in the instance of an amendment to address concerns when you send the inspection report over? Now everything in that inspection report theoretically must be disclosed. Um, if this deal doesn't go through, I would strongly suggest that you amend your seller's property disclosure after you've received this. If that is not the case, if you don't want to amend your seller's property disclosure, don't get the inspection report. You're going to be operating in a vacuum of information, but still that's sometimes necessary. Okay. Um, a suggestion or a tip. Most of the amendment to address concern or the inspection reports um, will be will have a summary section where they usually put the items in a more brief and condensed form, and they usually make those items in their red. And it's a good idea to go to that focused summary report and use that in your amendment to address concerns as somewhat of the highlight of the most important items according to the inspector. Okay. So a keep it simple, KISS principle rule, cut and paste. Love it. Use the inspection report to cut the item from it, but then you got to go the next step and tweak it. All right, so let's talk about this. So when you're writing the amendment to address concerns, there is a good opening sentence that I recommend that you use in every amendment to address concerns, and it can be found easily within Docs Plus, and it reads just like this. Sellers agree at their expense to address the following issues that were identified through the inspection process and to provide all paid receipts, warranties of work to the buyer not later than usually 3 to 5 to 7 days prior to closing. It kind of depends on what repairs you've got going on. Furthermore, seller agrees to allow the buyer to reinspect the work to ensure that it is completed as agreed. So that is the opening sentence that basically provides the guidelines for all of the items that are about to follow. Okay. Also, there's this one section up here that that is saying that that the buyer's due diligence period either shall or shall not terminate. What's the thought process behind that one, you guys? What's going to be in the best interest of your client in most cases?
Shall
That
not.
Shall not.
that it shall not terminate. So in other words, even though you're agreeing to repair these items, as long as if my due diligence isn't up until Friday evening, I can still change my mind and decide no, even after we've agreed on this until Friday evening. Okay. So if you're in the buyer position and you're representing the buyer, I would say shall not terminate. If you have the listing and this is an ATAC that is sent to you, I'd say it is going to terminate. Okay, so it all depends on which side of the transaction that you are on. Okay, let me get back. All right, we back on the right screen, everybody? The opening sentence? All right. For each item that you are going to put on the amendment to address concerns, here's the rule of the thumb. It's the typical what, why, where, when, how, all answer all the questions. So you want to state what is the problem. And usually that is an easy one to cut and paste the problem statement from the inspection report. Why is it a problem? Well, if it's a problem with the windows, that creates a safety issue because there's no egress. What specifically the buyer is requesting to be done. The seller will repair/replace is probably the best sentence, the opening sentence. What is that? A prepositional phrase? Somebody grammatically help me with that. Is that a prepositional phrase? Seller will? I don't know. Anyway, that's a great way to open that sentence is the seller will. Okay. Who is the other question you want to ask for? Who is going to be responsible for doing whatever the seller will? Okay. Is it seller will repair and replace using a licensed electrician or a licensed plumber? That's going to be the highest standard of a technician's qualifications, if you will. The next level down you could specify is a qualified technician will replace the windowsills on the front living room window. Well, a qualified technician, that person doesn't necessarily need to be licensed, but hey, a handyman is a qualified technician, right? That's good. If you just say seller will, then who is doing it pretty much doesn't matter to you. It could be a licensed technician. It could be a qualified technician. It could also be Bubba, the seller's brother-in-law, could do that work if all you said is seller will replace the garage door. Well, if Bubba, your brother-in-law, knows how to replace a garage door, you could theoretically get him to do it, right? Okay. So the what, the why, what specifically is to be done and who's to be doing it is the first questions that we ask. Then we've got a few more. Repair completed to what standard? All right. Should it have matching paint color? Should it be consistent with elsewhere in the home? If you use the example I just used a minute ago and you said that the right side garage door is rotted and needs to be replaced, and you say seller will have a licensed garage door technician replace the right side garage door. Well, they could replace it and it could be painted purple, and the one that you wanted it to match is painted white. If all you said was seller will replace and don't use consistent with elsewhere in the home or a matching paint color to the other garage door, they could theoretically say it's done and you've got no argument because you didn't write it strong enough to get exactly what your client was looking for. Okay. Also, when the work is to be completed and verified in what way. If you do the opening sentence, both of those questions are already answered for you. Okay. little bit tougher to write an amendment to address concerns than just cut and paste in the inspection report. Okay, there are some great clauses for tips here that you can use within Remind, and they're under Century 21. They include things like your home warranty, your termite. There's a whole bunch of other special steps in there. Before you start writing your own special steps into an amendment to address concerns, look, it's a good chance there's already been written for you somewhere else. If you need one for termites, if you need one for the home warranty, if you need one for, the swimming pool being cleared out, there's probably one in there dealing with the swimming pool. All right. Some additional tips for when you're doing your amendment to address concerns: number each item in the amendment to address concerns. Why would you want to do that? Sure makes it a whole lot easier when you're negotiating a contract and you go, we want to remove item number 3, as opposed to the third one down, the one that deals with the garage door opener or whatever. Okay. Because you want to be able to reference that page number, that item number, or the page number in the inspection report too. That's another good way to include that in your ATAC is the item dealing with the garage doors on page 6, item number garage 3 on that for the page report. Okay. It's also a good tip to group your items by the trade that they are in. If you have 5 electrical items, it's a lot easier to put one heading of electrical and 5 sub bullets underneath of it. And then you can just say, well, you know what? We only had 3 trades involved: electrical, plumbing, and windows, as opposed to 11 items on the report. We only had 3 trades involved. Makes it a little bit more palatable, and it makes it easier for the agent to see that you only have to call three tradesmen to be able to get the contract to go through. Okay. Another pro tip: get a quote from a professional contractor. If you're told that there's a number of electrical items on there, send your inspection report to an electrician. Get a quote for them to do the 10 electrical items that are on there. When you are negotiating, knowledge is power. The more you know about how much something costs and the less ambiguity there is, the more powerful your negotiating position becomes. Okay. And when you actually do the amendment, if you've got a quote from a particular electrician and you like that quote, and you don't want it to be the seller's brother-in-law, Bubba, doing that work, you can actually say, seller will have the licensed electrician in the attached quote, ABC Electrical, complete the following work no later than 5 days prior to the closing. And that way you're in control of the repairs that are being done, not the seller. Okay. Good idea. Use that one a lot. Very, very effective tool. Okay. In the negotiations, it is sometimes necessary to go through and say, we have issues with these major repair items, even though you're anticipating that the seller is going to offer some cost concession, or maybe your buyer even wants cost concessions. Maybe they don't want the seller to repair the wobbly toilets in the house. Maybe they would rather have $1,000 thrown towards their closing costs. So sometimes you have to ask for the repairs before you can ask for money in lieu of those repairs. Okay. Quotes from vendors, I already discussed that briefly. And I got to tell you, folks, never underestimate what a seller might be willing to do. I had a $900,000 listing that they came back with literally like 2.5 pages of repairs on the amendment to address concerns, and the seller was like, "I don't care, I'll do it all." I was like, "You sure? You don't have to. We could pare this down. We could whittle it down." And he was like, "No, I'll do it." Okay, so never underestimate what the seller is willing to do. Never be non-apologetic. Never come to them and say, "Well, if it would be okay, the buyer would like for your seller to do X, Y, and Z." No, the buyer should have the expectation of getting a home that is safe, reliable, all of the things that that you want to move into. They deserve. All right, so don't be apologetic about it. Just matter of fact. Okay. And a great script for overcoming that listing agent's objections or even the seller's objections is, look, you know what? My seller is not asking, or my buyer is not asking for anything that the next buyer is not going to be asking for too. It's it's a perfectly reasonable expectation for the home to have whatever it is that you're asking for. Wouldn't it be just easier to just resolve it now? Let's not have to go back on the market and lose all that time on the market. That's the best way to negotiate those repairs. All right, and I am now 2 minutes over, and I've still got 7 or 8 slides left. So I am going to stop there, and we will pick up the rest on Thursday. All right. Anybody
I,
have any questions? Anybody dealing with anything right this minute?
yeah, so I am, and I was wondering if all of those, um, what do you call the little insert things that you found for the ATAG, can we use those in the beginning for the offer?
Say that one more time. Let me make
Can
sure I
we
understand the
use
question.
those in the beginning just for the offer, like before we get to, after, so to let them know what we want done in the original offer, not after the inspection, is what I'm asking.
Is it possible? Yes, it absolutely is possible. Is that an advisable position in the current market that we are in? One could argue probably not, because if you know that you want the carpet to be replaced in the main floor of the home, on the one hand, one says, if you know that that's a deal breaker, I would probably put it in the original offer. But at the same time, if you put it in the offer, and in this market where multiple offers are pretty much the norm, and I'm looking at two offers, one that's asking for the flooring to be replaced and one that's not, I'm probably going to go with this one first. Okay. So for the most part in this market, in this seller's market, with the high amount of competition that they're in, generally speaking, I'm advising most people, don't put repairs in your original offer, because it's going to put you at a disadvantage to even get your offer accepted. If
So then do you just go ahead and adjust the price for what you think
you can,
and just
you
not
can
mention anything and then wait until afterwards?
you can also wait and negotiate those issues in this amendment to address concerns with the goal of lowering the price at that point. It's all a matter of balancing in the equation, doing the best thing for your client, and at the same time having the highest probability of your client actually making it to the closing table, because those two things are quite often in conflict with each other. Does that make sense, Tippy?
Yes, thank you. I'll talk
Okay.
about the rest on our coaching call.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Any other questions before anybody's got anything go? I'm just looking at the chat, but some sellers agents don't know that. Which are we talking about? What were you talking about, Athena? You're on mute if
I
you're
was
trying to
talking,
talk.
yeah, I was talking about when you mentioned that the property doesn't necessarily have to be brought up to code. Some listing agents don't know that it's not necessarily a must. So if you kind of present it to them like it is, you might be able to use that to your advantage.
Yeah, that could be the case. Anybody that's smart and a savvy negotiator is probably going to tell you, oh, well, there's no requirement to bring it up to code. So thank you very much. But next. All right, everybody. Thank you. Have a great day. I'll see you on Thursday. If anybody needs anything, coaching calendar is available this week. Take advantage of it. Y'all should know how to get to it at this point. If not, let me know. We'll get you there. Have a great day, everybody.